Hermione Jean Granger stood at the front of the Great Hall, heart hammering against her ribs as the sorting hat was lowered onto her bushy head of hair. Her nerves were raw. Her entire future at Hogwarts was about to be determined in this single moment. She had read every book on the subject that she could get her hands on, a small library's worth. It had taken her parents by complete surprise when she started quoting from Hogwarts: A History in daily conversation, especially since only a few short weeks ago they had just learned their daughter was a witch. In the hush, the sorting hat's brim twitched over Hermione's forehead. She tensed her shoulders, bracing for the cry of Gryffindor. She'd read so many heroic tales about that house, and she thought of how it had produced famed witches and wizards like Albus Dumbledore and the legendary Godric Gryffindor himself. Yet at the same time, she had pored over every mention of Ravenclaw in her reading, a house known for wit, learning, and a boundless thirst for knowledge, and unplucking from scowls of witch curtains swooping down to the floor on moonlit nights. Again, slowness, time, space, that definitely resonated too. Aha, came the small voice in her mind. Plenty of courage, yes, but even more curiosity. You belong with those who value the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake. I see how your greatest longing is to master every piece of magic you possibly can. Yes, that drive to learn is quite strong indeed. So, let it be, Ravenclaw. A hat's shout echoed through the hall. Her cheeks flushed as, for a moment, there was a small hush. She made her way to the Ravenclaw table, feeling everyone's eyes on her. As she slipped into her seat among the older students in their blue and bronze robes, she spotted Harry Potter at the Gryffindor table, looking just as startled. She sent him a small wave, uncertain of the path her Hogwarts life had just embarked upon. Ravenclaw Tower soared high above the rest of the school, perched on the western side of the castle. The entrance, a simple wooden door, was hidden behind a riddle door knocker shaped like an eagle's head. That first evening after the sorting feast, Hermione approached it with a half-dozen new housemates trailing behind. She couldn't help but feel nervous. Though she had craved a house that valued intellect, the reality of having to answer a riddle to get inside was a fresh challenge. What has roots as nobody sees is taller than trees, she heard from the door knocker. Hermione recognized the riddle from an old collection she had read in elementary school. She cleared her throat. A mountain, she answered. The door swung inward, revealing the Ravenclaw common room, circular walls lined with bookcases and airy windows that framed the starlit sky. The midnight brew carpet shimmered in the light of floating candles, while a statue of Rowena Ravenclaw herself stood graciously on a high dais. Hermione felt a hush of awe wash over the group of first years. They were quickly ushered to their dormitories. Hermione, trunk in tow, quietly found her four-poster bed amid other excited new Ravenclaws. Padma Patil was among them, a bright, curious girl who'd also been sorted into Ravenclaw. Padma offered Hermione a welcoming smile. Across the room, Penelope Clearwater, a fifth-year prefect, nodded sympathetically at the pack of new students still blinking in awe at the shimmering environment. Hermione's skin tingled. She might be in a different house than Harry or Ron. She'd briefly met Ron Weasley on the train, but perhaps here, surrounded by inquisitive minds, she'd truly find her place. She set her newly acquired wand on her bedside table and settled in for a new life in Ravenclaw Tower. Hermione's classes started the next day, and she practically sprinted from the tower to ensure she arrived on time. Well, to be honest, at least 15 minutes early. She jammed her nose into her brand new textbooks whenever she had a spare second, flipping pages with the kind of glee most children reserved for chocolate frogs. In Charms, Professor Flitwick positively beamed whenever Hermione raised her hand to answer questions, which, admittedly, was almost every question. Seated beside fellow Ravenclaws like Terry Boot and Anthony Goldstein, Hermione soon found that her thirst for knowledge was matched by her housemates, who were enthralled by new ideas. The difference was that Hermione's dedication was so fierce, so unwavering, that even some Ravenclaws teased her for being a bit excessive. Still, they often found themselves grateful when she quickly explained complicated concepts from the reading. Transfiguration with Professor McGonagall proved trickier. Hermione found the incantations challenging at first, though she diligently practiced. During the second week of classes, she caught Harry Potter's eye in the corridor between lessons. Noticing he appeared a bit lost with his schedule, she offered him a quiet wave, and he half smiled back. she felt a moment's pang of regret. They had bonded on the Hogwarts Express. Had they both been in Gryffindor, perhaps they'd spend more time together. But different houses meant different sets of responsibilities. Yet the house distinction didn't stop them from crossing paths. The first-year classes were often combined. It was in potions with the Slytherins that she found the environment far less inviting. Snape's cold demeanor permeated the dungeons. Even so, Hermione's aptitude soon became clear, her meticulously cut ingredients and carefully measured fluids leading to textbook-perfect brews. Draco Malfoy, a sneering Slytherin, mocked her for being a know-it-all. Ron Weasley, who sat in the back of the class, occasionally shot her sympathetic looks. Despite his occasional snide remarks, he seemed genuinely impressed by her skill. Whether in Slytherin or not, Hermione refused to let anyone's jeers tarnish her pride in her academic prowess. Back in Ravenclaw, Hermione often found herself in the library with a rotating cast of housemates, Padma Patil, Lisa Turpin, and Michael Corner included. They studied together, testing each other on wand movements and reciting newly learned spells. They were a serious bunch, all determined to excel. Late-night study sessions were common, and the group thrived off of each other's curiosity. At times, the quiet hum of the dusty library shelves was interrupted by excited whispers as they discovered new bits of magical history or puzzling theoretical frameworks in A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration. Hermione struggled, however, with an overwhelming sense of isolation. She felt a certain kindred spirit to Harry, and even to Ron, who had a certain charm when he wasn't complaining about homework anyway. But now she was physically separated in the evenings, her dorm high in the Ravenclaw tower while they bunked down in Gryffindor. After all, Harry and Ron had a knack for stumbling upon rule-breaking adventures. Would she, locked in her tower, miss out on important revelations? It wasn't all lonely. Padma Patil, who shared Hermione's fascination with magical theory, soon became a close confidant. The two would bounce ideas off each other, compare solutions to complex charms homework, and even read advanced texts out of curiosity. Hermione found her excitement for magic mirrored in a friend for the first time, forging a bond that felt different from the easy camaraderie she might have had in Gryffindor. She started to settle in, though a tiny voice in the back of her mind wondered how she might have fared in the House of Scarlet and Gold. Things changed drastically one Halloween evening. The Great Hall was decked out in flying pumpkins, drifting candles, and life-size ghosts weaving between the students. Hermione had quietly excused herself, hurrying to the library to retrieve a book she needed for an upcoming essay. In the corridor leading there, she overheard Parvati Patil gossiping to her twin sister Padma about Ron Weasley making some unkind comment regarding Hermione's bookishness. Embarrassed and wounded, Hermione took refuge in the nearest girl's bathroom, tears pricking her eyes. She lingered there longer than she intended, replaying the hurtful remark in her head. The rumble of heavy footsteps snapped her out of her thoughts. Her heart seized. A massive mountain troll had entered the castle, set loose by none other than Professor Quirrell, though they didn't know that yet. In her solitary corner, Hermione realized this giant brute had wandered into the very bathroom where she was hiding. Her breath caught in her chest as the troll's stench assaulted her senses. Moments later, the bathroom door banged open. Hermione froze. She clutched her wand, but panic overwhelmed her. The troll swung its club, shattering sinks and sending shards of porcelain flying. By sheer luck, Harry Potter and Ron Weasley, ignoring house divisions, burst inside. They had overheard that Hermione was alone and remembered she didn't know the troll was on the loose. Acting on instinct and concern, they rushed to warn her. In that chaotic moment, Hermione realized true friendship crossed house lines. Ron, trembling, shouted, "Wingardium Leviosa!" the very levitation spell Hermione had been meticulously correcting him on in charms. Miraculously, it worked. The troll's club rose high into the air and crashed on its own thick skull, sending the creature collapsing in an unconscious heap. Hermione stared, wide-eyed, shaking from head to toe. "Thanks," she managed, as teachers burst in and began shouting. Professor McGonagall demanded an explanation. Hermione, though terrified, covered for Harry and Ron, claiming she had been tackling the troll by herself. That night, as she returned to Ravenclaw Tower, the lines between the houses felt a little thinner. Perhaps she was in Ravenclaw, but she had allies beyond her house. A new sense of belonging that transcended the metallic line of bronze and blue. It struck her that had she been a Gryffindor, That moment might have played out similarly, but the empathy shown to her by Harry and Ron now seemed even more profound, bridging their differences. While the year marched on, Hermione soon found that the main advantage of being in Ravenclaw was access to some advanced knowledge streams. Older students like Penelope Clearwater or Roger Davis would point out esoteric texts that could bolster Hermione's academic prowess. On weekends, Hermione and Padma would slip past the high stone archway leading to the library's restricted section, with a teacher's note of course, to read up on ancient runes or even obscure charms. At the same time, she didn't entirely avoid the escapades that Harry and Ron found themselves in. She had kept an ear out whenever the boys mentioned suspicious happenings like that three-headed dog on the third-floor corridor or the break-in at Gringotts. Their curiosity about Nicholas Flamel, a name they had stumbled upon, trickled over to Hermione, her Ravenclaw resources. Along with her housemate's help, ultimately she discovered Flamel's identity as the noted alchemist behind the Sorcerer's Stone. Without skipping a beat, she took that knowledge to Harry and Ron, thrilled that her research had solved a crucial puzzle. Christmas came and went, and Hermione spent part of the holidays with her parents, but her mind never left Hogwarts. Even as she sat by her family's Muggle Christmas tree, sipping hot cocoa, she longed for the thick walls of Ravenclaw Tower. When she returned for the new term, she had fresh determination coursing through her veins. Before she knew it, the rumor circulated that Harry, Ron and Neville had been caught out of bed. They'd lost a colossal number of points for Gryffindor. Hermione had nothing to do with that fiasco. She'd been busy in the library, ironically finishing an essay on the properties of magical water creatures. When she heard about the fiasco that cost Gryffindor so many house points, she felt a twinge of sadness for Harry and Ron. House rivalries flared, and they were ostracized by their own house. But deeper mysteries loomed. Whispers about the Sorcerer's Stone, about the hidden corridor, and the dangers in the castle reached a fever pitch. Hermione, with Padma's help, pieced together stray clues from side remarks by professors. Then, on a fateful night, Hermione overheard Harry and Ron planning to sneak out to protect the stone from the elusive threat they believed was hidden beneath the trapdoor. And, despite being separated by their different house dorms, Hermione's logical mind told her they'd need help. Her help. Her sense of loyalty overrode caution. She crept from Ravenclaw Tower, mindful of the caretaker Filch's prying eyes, and made her way to the meeting spot near the moving staircase. Her wand was tucked in her robes, hand trembling. She had never broken the rules on such a large scale before, but this was bigger than house lines or fear of detention. This was about protecting something precious to the entire wizarding world. If knowledge was her compass, then using that knowledge for the greater good was her moral anchor. Slinking through the corridors with Harry and Ron, she reflected that though they'd never become the unstoppable trio they might have been in Gryffindor, the bond they'd forged was genuine. She had learnt that unity doesn't mandate being under the same banner. The three friends overcame obstacles, tricky plant vines, lethal chess games, cunning riddles, in search of the stone. Where Hermione's puzzle-solving mind excelled, she stepped forward. Her heart pounded, but her training in riddles from Ravenclaw's knocker gave her the confidence to approach logic-based challenges. And in that final chamber, Harry faced down Professor Quirrell, who was harboring Lord Voldemort's wraith-like presence. Hermione and Ron hung back, powerless against Quirrell's direct hostility. Yet, the role she had played could not be understated. Her careful reading and puzzle-solving had guided them all that far. If there was a single shining moment when Hermione felt her identity as a Ravenclaw, her knowledge and intellect proved crucial, it was that night. She might not have the raw bravery of a Gryffindor, but her thirst for understanding had guided him to the threshold of success. In the aftermath, Hermione dreaded the inevitable punishments. Points had certainly been lost. She imagined the Ravenclaws shaking their heads in scorn. Yet to her amazement, Dumbledore recognized their courage and intelligence in Hermione's case in his awarding of house points at the last feast of the year. It made her flush with pride. Even if she wasn't wearing a Gryffindor tie, her actions, combined with those of Harry and Ron, had kept the Sorcerer's Stone from Voldemort's grasp. House lines, it turned out, could be crossed without diminishing who she was at heart. The end-of-year feast was a swirl of color. Slytherin's green and silver banners had been streaming from the walls, but Dumbledore's last-minute points to Harry, Ron, Hermione and Neville caused a shift in the final house standings. Gryffindor soared to first place, triggering a transformation of decorations from green and silver to scarlet and gold. She was grateful for the role she'd played, but also a bit wistful that Ravenclaw's own points didn't crown them the winner. Still, she felt an odd sense of joy for Harry and Ron, two friends she valued greatly. As she packed her trunk back in the airy heights of Ravenclaw Tower, her eyes drifted around the room she'd grown to love. Her nest of books, the star charts pinned to the ceiling, and the lively discussions that had carried her through the year. She realized that although her path here had diverged from what she had originally expected, she had discovered facets of herself she might never have found in Gryffindor. The riddle door knocker had tested her inquisitive mind daily. Sharing late-night reading sessions with Padma had refined her understanding of magical theory. Surrounded by eagles, she had recognized that her unstoppable thirst for knowledge was not just a personality quirk, but a source of strength. In the following years, Hermione Granger's presence in Ravenclaw left an undeniable mark. She immersed herself in advanced classes, forging new relationships not only with her housemates but across the entire school. As the threat of Voldemort grew, she championed alliances, bridging house divides with her logical insight and unwavering moral code. She still supported Harry whenever she could, chasing down Horcruxes and unraveling mysteries, but she did so as a proud Ravenclaw, an intellectual collaborator rather than the signature Gryffindor sidekick. One of the biggest shifts was Hermione's confidence. Where some might have said that Hermione's place was always with the bravest of the brave, Hermione discovered a different kind of bravery in Ravenclaw. The courage to question, to relentlessly pursue the truth, to stand strong in her convictions. Her intelligence was no longer seen as merely an impressive quirk, but as part and parcel of who she was. A fear when House Cup times came around. Her knowledge, creativity, and determination earned Ravenclaw not just house points, but a fresh wave of admiration from teachers and peers alike. And let's not forget the heartbreaks and joys that come with Hogwarts. In her third year, when the Time Turner fiasco came around, her sense of responsibility soared. She juggled impossible courses and extracurriculars, determined to experience every shred of magical knowledge on offer. Ravenclaw's culture supported her thirst to learn, though some older students cautioned her about burning out. She learned how to balance her academic appetite with the human connections she'd forged. By the time her OWLs rolled around, the entire house, and indeed the entire school, expected miraculous results. And she delivered, topping the charts in nearly every subject. Even romance played out a bit differently. While in Gryffindor she might have gravitated more obviously toward Ron Weasley, in Ravenclaw she found herself sometimes discussing advanced arithmancy theories with older classmates who appreciated her mind. She'd always be close to Ron and Harry, but would she have ended up forging a different romantic path if she was in a different house? Her connections across the houses opened doors to new faces, and while the seeds of a possible relationship with Ron still might have been there, the subtle shift in context changed how readily they saw each other's day-to-day struggles. Through it all, Hermione Granger remained Hermione Granger, fiercely intelligent, deeply compassionate, and dedicated to justice. Only now, her house identity reminded everyone of the vital role intellect plays in challenging the dark forces that threatened the wizarding world. Ravenclaws often garnered a reputation for quiet scholarship, but under Hermione's influence, they took on an active role in crucial battles, from the Department of Mysteries to the Battle of Hogwarts. Where knowledge alone wasn't enough, applied knowledge, guided by a moral compass, was what truly mattered. In the end, the brightest witch of her age realized that she was exactly where she belonged. Gryffindor might have offered her a certain camaraderie from the start, but Ravenclaw's acceptance of her unquenchable curiosity shaped her into a witch that combined intellect and empathy in a way that perhaps only Rowena Ravenclaw herself could have envisioned. And of course, Harry and Ron remained close allies. House lines couldn't sever the profound experiences they shared year after year at Hogwarts.